just about to go live. So I will fix it.
Okay.
All right, over to you, Laura.
Good evening and welcome to Story Hour. I'm Laura Blackwell, tonight's host. My co-host, Daniel Marcus, started Story Hour to help everybody stay connected while we're having to stay apart. And so we've been gathering around this virtual campfire for about a year now. And we actually have our furthest ever campfire guest tonight. We have a reader who is reading from Germany, where it is 4 a.m. So yeah, quite valiant in my opinion. And it's great to see so many familiar faces. Welcome back to those who are returning, and welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. As always, we have two writers reading for their favorite nonprofits. Tonight's readers are Sonia Focke and Samantha Mills. If you are fortunate enough to help others, please consider a donation to one or both of tonight's featured nonprofits, World Builders and Mama's Kitchen. Sonia is reading for World Builders. World Builders works to unite the geek community into a massive force to fund education, opportunity, and sustainable self-sufficiency for families and communities worldwide. By partnering with established nonprofits for decades of proven success, World Builders makes the world a better place one family at a time. You can learn more at worldbuilders.org. Samantha Mills is reading for Mama's Kitchen. Mama's Kitchen strives to provide nutritional support to San Diego residents at risk of malnutrition due to critical illness such as HIV, cancer, congestive heart failure, type 2 diabetes, and chronic kidney disease. Together with hundreds of volunteers, businesses, and community supporters, Mama's Kitchen strives to help our clients stay healthy, preserve their dignity, and keep their families together by providing medically tailored home-delivered meals, along with pantry services and nutrition education, all at no cost. You can learn more at mamaskitchen.org. If you are here on Zoom, feel free to leave your camera on. It can be really a cool thing for our readers to actually see people while they're reading. But please do mute your mic. And if you're on Zoom, chime in on the text chat if you like. If you're joining us on Facebook, thank you, but please understand that we're not seeing your messages in real time. And our first reader tonight is from Germany. Sonia is an author and Egyptologist born in New York, but living in Germany. After a childhood spent mostly in her head, since showered with a scorpion, defended a hill fort against Viking invaders, moved house in a VW Polo, and learned all of the Mikado by heart. She lives in Munich with a blacksmith and 2 Padawans. You can find her on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and sometimes even TikTok. Sonia, welcome.
Thank you.
Well, we'd love to hear the story that you have for us tonight. Thank you so much for coming from so far.
It's a pleasure. I'm excited. This is my first reading. I have 3 stories, actually. The
Wonderful.
first one is a short that I made for Arcana 2020 last year. That was based on each of the cards of the major arcana. It's called Chanson de Toile. There once was a tiny garden by a road, heady with the perfume of daisies and pink camellias, and looking onto the garden was a window of lead and glass, and behind that window was a song. It was sweet and sad, and a little bit hopeful. The song belonged to Yolanda. Yolanda sat by the window every day, airing out her song as she embroidered a train of spring flowers. Yet every few stitches, the song would falter, and she would put down her frame and stare out onto the road as a sigh, grown too big for her breast, escaped through the hole the song had left. Then she would look down and see that she had made this mistake and that one, and the song floated up again as she picked it all apart. One day, as the sad little melody escaped through the leaden seams of the window into the drowsy heat of the day, hooves beat a tattoo on the dry dirt in accompaniment, and rang still as the last note faded away. Yolanda looked up to see a sanguine horse, its mane and tail of molten copper. Astride the horse was a crimson youth, his face searing silver as the ripple of water, and in his hand the youth held a rose, and the rose shone like the setting sun. Yolanda dropped her embroidery and threw open her window, letting in the sunlight and the cooing of doves and the smell of hot dust. "Good sir, pray, who are you and why do you tarry?" The youth tilted his head, his fiery locks cascading around his shoulders, and answered, "I am the Knight Sanguine, and I stopped for your song." The little bird of hope beat its wings in Yolanda's breast. "A knight? And pray, where have your travels taken you?" "I have just come from the field of battle, where grim work awaited me." She leaned out of the casement. "Wars? Then perhaps you have met my Jehan, who left to find glory." The man grasped the radiant rose in his strong fingers and said in a gravelly voice, "I have met Jehan, and he has found glory. But surely by now he has forgotten my name and loves me no more," said Yolanda with a smile that knew the truth. The wrinkles tightened around his russet eyes. "Your name, fair Yolanda, was on his lips when I parted with him. Will he be coming home soon?" "He will be coming home soon, and clad all in white." Raising the rose to his bone-white teeth, he kissed it and leaned over the purple hyacinths to hand it in through the window. Yolanda plucked it from his ivory fingers and gazed into the deep, dark sockets of his eyes. And the song bubbled up in sobs and hiccups as the Knight Sanguine went on his way, his horse's hoofs tolling hollow to the melody captive behind the window. We now have a slightly more positive, well, maybe not, we'll see, story called A Tale of Two Cats. The amber, dangling between her big oval brooches, glint in the midnight sun as she takes off their harnesses. She scratches them under their chins, and they purr appreciatively before settling down in their rabbit fur blankets. She blows them a kiss before slipping out into her many-seated hall. "Good night, cats." She doesn't insult them by giving them names. Cats know who they are. The other cats also know who they are. The closest cats get to names are designations such as "the one who was bigger than me and tried to eat a porcupine once, the daft bugger," or "the one with the notched ear," or "the one who just stole my mouse and whom I will trounce." They are temporary, mercurial, unpredictable. Just like cats. For purposes of our story, since we are all slow, dim-witted humans, we shall call them the crafty one and the nimble one. Once the female creature had gone, they yawned and stretched and palavered. "Where shall we go next?" asked the crafty one. The nimble one yawned. "I want a place with a lot of rats." "Why rats?" The crafty one licked his paw and started washing himself. "Because they're bigger than mice, but smaller than hares." The crafty one agreed that right now, this night, this was a good one. Ship? Not enough space. The nimble one stretched the kinks out of his back legs and settled down. "I want to explore. That place with all the snakes and the funny-looking rocks. We could annoy pumas. Too many armadillos." The crafty one agreed that armadillos were stupid. "France? There are a lot of rats in France? Make something called ratatouille." The nimble one considered this. It was as good a reason as any. They leapt through the night from star to star, white streaks against the backdrop of infinity. After a brief detour in Greece to annoy all three of Spot's heads, they landed in a big garden thing. It was as though humans had finally decided to build a place just for cats. There were wide open spaces to cavort, There were hedges neatly trimmed to hide in. Some of them were even shaped like animals you could pretend to maul. There were statues to climb and fountains to avoid getting wet under. There were big ponds within each side so you couldn't fall in by accident, and they were filled with fat, lazy goldfish. If you got tired of the outside, there was a huge inside place with lots of big windows that let in sunshine but no wind, polished floors to slip on, and soft carpets to pat on. There were curtains and tables to sharpen your claws, soft chairs for snoozy naps, and mantelpieces to balance upon, and countless things that made funny noises when they fell. They even had a special sort of chair with a hole on top, making a comfy little box to curl up in. The nimble one was just availing himself of this amenity when he was subjected to a pair of pale human buttocks being lowered onto the hole. The ensuing scene was not one the nimble one was particularly proud of. He panicked and conducted himself in a way unbecoming of a cat, though he did leave some very nice welts. The human screamed and danced around a fat male with pale blue eyes and a powdered wig, and the nimble one nodded in satisfaction as he hopped out of the box. Then the doughy human threw a vase at the nimble one, then a tiny box, then a tick-tock box. The nimble one fled, giving the wide-buttocked one an even greater scratching wasn't worth the bother. He had many more pleasant adventures, involving mice and small yappy lapdogs with furry ears just perfect for batting. He danced with the light reflected from someone's jeweled cravat pin. He napped on nice precarious statue helmet and didn't fall down once. Finally, he met up with the crafty one at a small fountain. The crafty one was talking to another cat, a magnificent long-furred creature in silky brown and gray. There were a great many other cats around the place, feral cats and collared cats and mouser cats and pampered Angora minettes, but none worthy of speaking to. Until now, this new cat knew exactly what he was and what was due to him. The regal-looking cat turned and studied the nimble one a while, blinking with eyes the color of fresh grass. This one knows his way around, the crafty one said. He has offered to show us a nice spot for grooming and another for sunning. It is a place for growing oranges, the other cat said. It is always warm and its smells are tantalizing. The crafty one agreed it sounded nice. How do you know it? I live here, the other cat sniffed. This is all my territory. You're quite lucky. You have such beautiful, graceful tails, or I might ignore you altogether. I have a human who lives in a big house and gives me cushions to sit on and the best meats and cream. I shine so bright that my humans call me Brilliant One once she strokes me. The two cats agreed that this was quite proper behavior and he had chosen his human well. I hold court regularly if you want to come by. The crafty one made polite noises. The new cat was quite impressive, but not quite worthy of that. The three went off to the orange growing place and the back scratching place and a place where there were goats and chickens. The brilliant one showed them the best places for mice, and the two cats showed him how to best annoy goats. Once there was a loud noise, and gravel flew. One of the other cats went down limp. From the rooftop, a figure shouldered a gun. It's the fat one everyone bows to, the brilliant one told them later. He's the king here. The others nodded. They understood kings. He hates cats. He won't shoot me, of course. The brilliant one licked his paw languidly. I am too quick and too important. He would not dare. The nimble one smugly told him how he had clawed the king's bottom, and the brilliant one agreed that he had it coming to him. One day, the brilliant one did not come. But that was all right, because he was a cat. A few days later, the nimble one caught a mouse he didn't intend to eat, and decided he might as well give it to the brilliant one just in case he was bored of the fine sweetmeats his humans had gotten him that day. When he arrived at the brilliant one's rooms and looked through the window, there was noise and shouting, and the brilliant one's human was sobbing over his lifeless form. The nimble one turned away. When he came back to their favorite sunning place, his ears were flat and his teeth bared. You know the human whose buttocks I clawed? He killed the one I was looking for. His human is inconsolable. The crafty one agreed that this was the right way to behave. He stretched and yawned. He was starting to get bored. Should we avenge him? The nimble one flicked his tail and started washing his back. I suppose so. What shall we do? The one who is dead, said said the human was a king. He flicked his ears forward. A king needs subjects, does he not? So the two cats went out to the villages outside the garden and told the cats that lived there to stop killing the mice and rats who ate the food out in the fields and in the granaries. Why should we listen to you? They asked. We are lighter on our feet than any shadow and leap from star to star. And the other cats agreed that it was a very clever thing indeed to cavort among the stars, and did just as they asked. They went to the big city not far away and told the cats that lived there to stop killing the mice and rats that ate the food sold in bakeries and butchers. Why should we listen to you? They asked. Because we can jump onto the highest clouds where the sun is always shining. And the other cats agreed that it was a very fine thing to have a spot that was always sunny, and did just as they asked. They went to the cats in the people's houses and asked them to stop killing the mice and rats that ate the bread and bacon in the humans' cupboards. Why should we listen to you? They asked. Because we have our very own chariot and a goddess to sit in it. And the other cats agreed that it was a very useful thing indeed to have a goddess to call their own, and did just as they asked. And then they got bored and went back to their warm rabbit furs in the room next to the many-seated hall, just in time for their goddess to come in with some nice fish. Sometime later, the nimble one yawned. Do we know what happened to that fat human whose buttocks I clawed? Other humans cut off his head, I think, the crafty one answered, rolling on his back to bat at a spider web. Serves him right. Where shall we go next? Anyone interested in the background for this, look up Louis XVI and his aversion to cats, and Le Brillant, who was a cat of one of the countesses, I think, whom we accidentally killed. He had to have a picture done of the cat, and there was a whole negotiation going on. It's quite interesting, actually. So the last one is completely different. We find ourselves in space. Dun, 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 dun. Negotiations. Personal audio log, universal time, 34:56:98. Lieutenant Zafira, ESS Nocturna. What a day. Have you ever hacked into the mainframe of a sentient supercomputer using a PF script and a reconfigured Trojan while the captain spouts philosophical babble at it? Wait, recording paused. Third time this month? Jeez. Why do all these evil supercomputers use PX? I mean, I get it, evil, but why an archaic, nonsensical, color-based language no one has used in over a millennia? On the plus side, I only needed to modify the code from last time to account for its data retrieval architecture, so the captain really had to hurry to get the existential conundrum in. That made it look like he popped at circuits. Come on, honey. By now, everyone here knows you can't actually logic a computer to death. But there went my coffee break, and it made us late for our mission to Alpha Sagittarius 6 and its precious Ardinian reserves, and put me behind on configuring the translator. Oh, look. At least the chief mate appreciates me. A commendation. Let's see if it gets approved this time. All right. Sonic shower? Check. Nice music? Check. Sparrow wine? Check. Fluffy bathrobe? Check. Alpha Sagittarius 6 is primitive, and the geologists know how to use the translator. So, holovid or audiobook? Lieutenant Zafira to Shuttle Bay Alpha, full landing party gear, departure in 20 chrono units. Ooh. There goes my evening. Audio log, universal time, 34:56:99. Mobile log data. Oh, that went well. After all, Who would have thought that even a primitive society might have patrols in the tunnels beneath their main fortress? And who knew that large deposits of raw ardinium would short out the power packs in our laser pistols? I knew that. Oh, and some Barnes, our geologist. He knew that too. And the chief mate, bless his barren administrative soul. He knew that. So did the 3 crewmates and the medic, and she barely acknowledges the existence of anything without a nervous system. But dungeons are all right. Bunk has a mattress and there's a cover on the amenities, so the smell's not too bad. And trousers! I mean, I've got some mean legs if I do say so myself, but they tend to get scratched up in firefights. But if you reprogram your sex in the Cycler database, it gives you the boy uniforms. And ta-da! No cuts that get infected with alien spores and spawn weird telepathic life forms. They took the captain. I can hear the others in their cells taking bets on how quickly the queen will fall to his charms. Ooh, queen. He dragged us before her, resplendent on her throne of stone and silver, a golden ardinium crown and matching bracelets and collar throwing green highlights over her dark umber skin. Her eyes were flint as she looked us over. The captain, of course, was talking, doing what he actually does best. I did my best to translate. The language is very close to others in the database, and the translator raced through vocabulary and syntax and consonant shifts, and I just chose whatever seemed least like gibberish, hoping it made sense. I'm not actually a linguist, not of sentient, well, never mind. Her face was impassive as she listened. And then our eyes locked. I probably imagined it, and yet the cold steel of her eyes seemed to ignite. I couldn't look away. I felt breathless, shipwrecked, cast adrift in the middle of an asteroid field. And then she turned back to the captain as though she had felt nothing, as though her whole world hadn't been tilted on its axis. I glanced at the others. Sure, they must have noticed. No one reacted. Just me then. They're taking their time with the captain. I guess whatever they were discussing didn't need an interpreter, even one as clueless as I was. Why did that hurt? Audio log, universal time, 3457:00. Mobile log data. It came for me, eventually. I clutched my data recorder, heart racing. Maybe the captain wasn't having fun times with the queen after all, but with the chief torturer instead. And now it was my turn. Torture, done that. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. No, it was more probable that the captain's negotiations had reached a state where oral communication was required. Ding! I won! The guards took me higher and higher in the fortress. The walls became smoother, covered in spider-silk hangings, inlaid with ardinium. Torches burned along the walls. Fire hazard. Closed oil lamps are the way to go. Less soot on the ceilings, too. The queen's chambers were everything I imagined. Silks and furs and gold and ardinium. The cloying smell of spices in the air. And lounging among them, the queen herself, dressed in something flowing, satiny that hid and revealed as she shifted. Funny, I couldn't see the captain. The queen beckoned. The guards pushed me from behind, and I scowled. I knew how this worked. I stood before her, my hair all over the place, my skin smudged, my trousers ripped, but look, no sepsis or alien parasites, yay! And mumbled what my translation program told me the standard grading should be. She looked me up and down and smiled. With a wave of her hand, she dismissed her guard. I pulled my eyes away and scanned the room. She said something, and I stupidly forgot I had my recorder and just stared at her like a guppy out of water. She smiled again, and this time there was warmth in it. She patted the bed beside her. She spoke again, and this time I looked down at the screen. It said, "Your king sleeps in the Forgle space." I laughed. I couldn't help it. Of all the ludicrous things to have ever happened to me. All the trans-dimensional godlike beings, all the slave societies run by well-meaning computers, white space-based, all the time travel, the space gladiators, and the surprisingly vicious snails of Arcturus. This was somehow the pinnacle. Her mouth thinned and she said something sharp. I gasped and tried to pull myself together. My device, I told her, gave me the wrong words. I hope the phrase I chose didn't involve the equivalent of boreal space. Your king, she repeated, and pointed to a door off to the side. He sleeps. She patted the bed beside her. Tell me about him. I sighed. Here we go again. How often had I had this conversation with high priestesses, pirate captains, and warrior queens? What do you want to know? She stretched out and caressed my arm. I shivered in the warm room. Is he... The recorder gave me several options for the last word. One was, fertile? Does he make good babies? Boy, and does he. Guess who manages the birthday calendar and sends regular paternal greetings? You guessed right. But with FTL time warping and relative planetary days, getting birthday gifts to everyone on time deserved a commendation in itself. I simply nodded. Good. I need a kitten. But I cannot give too much power to my head alligators. Kitten. Head what? Never mind, I got the gist. She toyed with a flyaway strand of hair on my bra. Her hand smelled of spices and sweat. You do not wiggle from here? No. I was a little breathless. I definitely do not wiggle from here. Good. The head alligators will be angry if I did not choose any of them. But if I did, they will all fall upon him like mice. Whoa, what kind of mice does this planet have? An outsider is chocolate. Someone with no Windlethorpe. This way, my kittens will endure, and I can keep them guessing as to who ended up in my carriage. Her hand traveled down my face. I am sorry, your gunny sex cannot be allowed to go free. But until I'm certain of kittening, your king will need his translator to help him skydive. The translations were getting more and more surreal. I set the recorder aside and captured her hand. Our eyes locked. Turns out, I make a pretty good negotiator. Personal audio log, universal time, 34:57:10. Tagged to public view. All right, sonic shower, check. Sparrow wine, check. Fluffy bathrobe, check. Getting everyone out alive after the medic confirmed conception and with a cargo of Ardenium to boot, check. My good friend the chief mate, who was unable to get my commendations approved. He's really sorry, yada yada, good work getting everyone out, better luck next time. Right. Recording paused for 600 seconds. All right, still in orbit? Check. Security to Shuttle Bay Alpha overrode? Check. Piloting license up to date? Who cares? Underwear? Hell no. This is my official resignation. I'm off to be a royal consort, bitches. You can find this one on the current issue of the Were Traveler and their issue Women Destroy Retro Science Fiction. It's definitely worth a look. So thank you very much. This was fun.
Thank you.
That's definitely a good one to close with because it was delightful. They all had a nice sprightly tone, but it's nice to end laughing. But you know, whether we're laughing or in shock or at the verge of tears at the end of one story, we always have to pause a moment between the different authors and just sort of reset and clear our minds to receive another story. All right, I'm ready. Our next reader is Samantha Mills. Samantha Mills is a science fiction and fantasy author living in Southern California. Her work has appeared in Beneath Ceaseless Skies, Strange Horizons, and Uncanny Magazine, among others, as well as New Voices of Science Fiction from Tachyon Publications. You can find her online at samtasticbooks.com or on Twitter at samtasticbooks. Samantha,
Hello.
welcome.
Thank you. Tonight I'll be reading Kiki Hernandez Beats the Devil. It was originally in Translunar Traveler's Lounge last year and then reprinted in Podcastle. So you can hear a professional read it as well. Here we go. Kiki Hernandez, rock legend of the Southwest, had 7 devils on her tail. They scurried through the roadside scrub, not even trying to sneak. She could hear their scrabble claws and clack her tails, their dripping maws and teeth. If they were trying to round her up for a crossroad deal-making, they were going about it all wrong. That's what happened when devils got hungry. They made mistakes. Kiki hummed as she walked, watching eddies of dust form tornadoes on the road ahead. It was a swagger of a walk, born of a perfect record. Kiki 72, devils 0. She would have been bored if she hadn't been so eager for an encore. "Come on out," she hollered. They tumbled forth in a gray-green tangle of many-jointed limbs, an acrid smell preceding them, sulfur and grave dirt and candy apples stuffed with razor blades. Their voices tangled like a nest of snakes. Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Are you vengeful? Are you sad? For a moment she felt it. The thirst, like 3 weeks eating salted pork. The grief that could only end in retaliation. And then Kiki popped open her molded plastic carrying case and pulled out her guitar, Mona Lisa. Mona Lisa was fierce. She was raw. She was a fine-tuned, devil-killing music monster. They never stood a chance. Kiki laughed, high and wild, as her fingers danced through Voodoo Child. Acoustic, sadly, but that was the state of the world these days. In Kiki's head, she was rocking steel strings and 100 watts. She was playing to a crowd of 20,000 and crushing it. The first trio of devils hit a solid wall of sound and crumpled, bloody and squealing, to the earth. The others skittered away, and she chased after them, shouting, "Come back, you cowards!" She needn't have worried. They raced for the crossroad, so desperate they didn't even notice what was waiting for them there. Kiki's hellhound. He was short and squat, with the jowls of a Neapolitan mastiff and the blue-black coat of a Frisian horse. He had curling horns for ears and deep pits of flame for eyes, and he swallowed those devils in 2 bites apiece. "Ozzy," Kiki scolded, "what did I say about wandering off?" He slumped hard against her leg, whining, and she pulled out a spare bone pick to loosen the gristle from his fangs. He let out a particularly unhellish yip when she accidentally jabbed his gum. "Well, next time don't chomp them around the ribs," she said. "Honestly, Ozzy." He tilted his head for scratches, and Kiki complied. She was still flush with the high of performing, the heart-fluttering, head-buzzing, loose muscle happiness that only came from a good tune. It didn't matter if there was no audience. She had Ozzy. And then a voice like rotting garbage slithered down the breeze. "Isn't that just too sweet to stomach?" Kiki spun, guitar drawn against her belly. An enormous toad-like devil was sitting on top of an overturned city bus, wide and squat and green, with a short, sharp horn protruding from the center of its forehead. A nasty wall of cacti stood between them, holding the beast out of guitar range. That bit of foresight was alarming. The devil should have been all riled up by the sense of blood and bone. It should have been slavering at her heels, stripped bare by hunger. But it only watched her with narrow-eyed satisfaction. "Are you hungry?" it croaked. "Are you weary?" Ozzy growled, and the devil chuckled. Kiki snapped, "There is nothing on this earth I'm willing to trade you, devil, and not a thing in hell you have to offer me, so either go home or come closer and hear me play." It tapped one soggy foot against the glass of an upturned window. "I left a gift inside." "I'll see you on Luna Mesa," the devil said, and it vanished in a burst of tar bubbles. Kiki staggered back from the stench. Can you believe that? She coughed. Can you believe it talking to me like that? Me? But Ozzy ran off chasing tar bubbles and vanished from sight. Kiki was left alone, staring at the bus. The smart thing to do was walk away. Whatever the devil had left behind could only mean trouble, and it would be a waste of precious daylight to hike around the cactus, climb the bus, deal with whatever foul prank waited within. A hand emerged from a broken window, and Kiki shouted, "Back, foul beast!" But the hand was followed by a head, and it was no many-fanged beast, but a tassel-haired kid. And the kid shouted, "Oh my God, you're Kiki Hernandez!" Kiki sighed. She could never resist a fan. Kiki marched the kid 2 miles past the crossroad before letting her speak. These conversations were best had away from a thin spot. "All right, fess up. What are you?" Kiki demanded. "I'm Lucy Sepulveda," the kid squeaked. "I'm from—" "That's not what I asked, and you know it." Kiki circled her warily. The kid was 5'0", with more hair than head. A construct, maybe, a bit of devil trickery manifested as a big-haired, gangly-legged preteen with a grungy guitar case and an even grungier homemade band t-shirt for The Exorcists. Nice touch. Kiki poked her joints with a stick. Elbows, knees, wrists, ankles. She checked the girl's reflection in a compact mirror and shone a flashlight down her throat for signs of the black spot. There were no infernal birthmarks on her neck, no tattoos on her spine, no hooks in her collarbones. The kid chattered breathlessly throughout. "Is it true you played at Greenwich Rock and Blakely Hall and the steps of the Capitol? I heard you banished 20 devils in one encore. I heard you defeated a blood queen with only 3 strings on your guitar. I heard—" "Everything you've heard about me is true," Kiki said. "So don't try anything. If you're some kind of monstrous, changeling, possessed devil child, I will find out. Now, what fake reason do you have for being in that bus?" "It's not fake," the kid protested. "I was cornered by that devil on my way to El Sabueso." "You were going to walk all that way?" Kiki demanded. "By yourself?" "I need an exorcist, and I heard they get together there." The kid clasped her hands together. "But now I've met you. You have to help me, Kiki. My whole town is overrun. Please, please. It isn't much farther. I came from just up the hill, from—" "Luna Mesa," Kiki sighed. "Luna Mesa," the kid finished. Kiki brooded. The sun was dipping low toward the hill in question. Not much farther was 20 miles, but it was 3 times that to double back, and the kid wasn't going to find any help there. "What happened?" Kiki asked. "It was the wells," the kid said quickly. "They were going dry. The mayor made a deal to fill them up again, but the water was bad. So there was another deal. And folks who'd gotten sick made deals too, to get better. And one thing led to another." Kiki nodded. She'd heard it all before. "How many?" she asked. "Not too many," the kid hedged. "But there's a ringleader, a devil giving orders from a human body. I think if you banish that one, the rest will go feral and hit the road. Will you come?" Kiki grimaced. It was a trap, all right, and she didn't like the idea of a devil getting ahead of her. But when had she ever run from a gig? "I'll come," she said, "but not before dawn. We'll camp at the base of the hill tonight." The kid bounced on her toes, about to start squealing again, and Kiki held up a hand to stop her. "One more thing. I'm not convinced you're clean, so understand that if you make one wrong move—" Kiki pointed toward the scrub, where Ozzy finally appeared, his mouth thoroughly covered in tar. "My dog will tear you to pieces." The kid spun around, pressed both hands to her cheeks, and screamed. The nice thing about a hellhound was you hardly needed a campfire for warmth. Kiki settled down at Ozzy's side that evening and let his chunky furnace of a body ease her aches. It would have been downright relaxing if the kid ever stopped babbling. "A hellhound! An actual, real-life, honest-to-goodness hellhound!" she enthused. "Does it talk? Does it cross worlds? Do you have to trade it like treats to do what you want?" Kiki glowered. She did, in fact, keep Ozzy well supplied in treats, but it wasn't transactional, she didn't think. "I Found him, she said. He was a runt, abandoned by his pack. Can't seem to get rid of him now. Ozzy vibrated with discontent, and she patted his back, a reassurance and a warning. This girl was not to be trusted. My daddy makes guitars, the kid said suddenly. She popped open her case, revealing the saddest, plainest, palest bit of carved wood that Kiki had ever seen, and gushed, "He's teaching me to play. I'm going to go on tour after this, not too far, in case I need help. Maybe you can give me a suggestion." "Hey," Kiki barked. "Absolutely not." The kid drew back. "But I can play." Kiki waved dismissively at the homemade guitar. "That's trash, kid. You haven't even got a humidifier. You know what the air'll do to that thing on the road?" Before the kid could argue, Kiki unsnapped her own guitar case and said, "Look, what do you see?" Mona Lisa was a hummingbird, Gibson, and as far as Kiki knew, the last of her line. That was handcrafted mahogany, mother of pearl inlays, a cherry burst finish. Kiki had found her in a ransacked mall in a condition so immaculate she knew it was fate. But she'd made some changes since then, and those were what she pointed out now. "Anyone can learn to play," Kiki said, "but out here a guitar needs to fight, and devils are fought best by other devils. My girl's got a thigh-bone saddle, hellhound hair strings, a devil-hide pickguard. Mona Lisa's half beast, baby." Tears welled up in the kid's eyes, but Kiki forced herself to stay firm. She said, "When we get up there, I'll do what I do, and you'll go inside and lock your door. Got it?" The kid lowered her gaze. "Got it?" Kiki repeated. The kid nodded, forlorn, and thank holy hell, that was the end of that. They entered Luna Mesa after dawn. They walked past silent roads, shuttered houses, overgrown yards, and everywhere the scent of stagnation. This town had been holding its breath so long, it forgot how to stop. Even Ozzy was quiet. The kid led them down an old, decrepit road to an old, decrepit house. The yard was full of debris, broken electronics and broken bones, all of it fractured and blanched by the sun. Kiki strummed her guitar once, twice, satisfying herself that it was in tune. Ozzy circled warily, his flaming gaze fixed tight to the house, and Kiki murmured, "Stay close to the kid on this one, Oz." The kid found a rusted pipe in the weeds and banged it against an abandoned car door. Bang, bang, like a summoning gong. The sounds peaked and faded, and the screen door swung open, hinges screaming. A man stood there, or something like a man. His skin was waxy and smooth, taut, and his eyes were sunken pits, only lacking a flame. "Lucy," he growled. He stomped down the porch steps, and the kid skittered back as though burned. Kiki started playing immediately, before he could think up an offer. She threw a little slash at him, a little page, letting her whims decide the set. The devil's host body hit her wall of sound and pushed right through. Kiki slipped, surprised, and Mona Lisa let out a note like strangling. He broke into a run. Kiki doubled down, playing harder, playing faster, going full eruption now. See how the bastard liked Van Halen. The host's body slowed, face contorting with strain as he grasped the air gone thick as molasses. He fell to his knees. Kiki advanced, feeling the sweat prickle her forehead and spine, feeling the music like lightning in her joints. She switched to a bit of Bonnie Raitt, high and sweet, and just the thing to rid a man of his personal demons. The host's body slumped over. Kiki laughed. After all that bluster and bite, he'd gone down like a baby devil 3 days from its first crossroad. She turned, gloating. "You promised me a fight, kid." But the street was still silent. The doors still shut. And the kid was crouched behind some debris, with Ozzy at her side, looking even more fearful than when they'd arrived. Before Kiki could move, the man started howling. His body convulsed, tapping a terrible beat against the asphalt, and his howls turned to gargles. His mouth cracked as wide as a snake's, and devils started pouring out. The kid had led her into a trap, all right. A trap called Legion. Kiki did the only thing a person could do. Run. She grabbed the kid by the shirt sleeve as she tore by, and they skidded into the house together, Ozzy close on their heels. Devils climbed out by the dozens behind them, chattering and screaming and whipping up the wind like a hurricane, and Kiki slammed the door hard against the first wave, shouting, "This was you, wasn't it?" "No, no, no," the girl said. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. Can't you do something?" Kiki barked a laugh. "I can't do a thing till they're out. Or do you want a devil exploding halfway down his throat?" The girl burst into tears, and Ozzy whined, and Kiki finally got a clear look at the room they were in. Battered old couch, battered old TV, piles of trash, and guitars, dozens of them, stomped and chewed and smashed to pieces by something with particular cause to hate the sight. Kiki sighed, letting the inevitability of the thing wash over her. "So," she said, "that's your daddy outside, huh?" And the whole damn story spilled out, for real this time. "It was all like I said," the kid said. "The mayor, the Wells, my daddy tried to fight them, but I got water sick, and he made a deal, and then what was I supposed to do?" Her voice cracked even higher. "It was that toad. He said bring an exorcist, and they'd let my daddy go, and I couldn't pass up a deal that good. I know there's always something they aren't saying. I'm not a fool. But then I met you on the road, and I thought, yes, Kiki Hernandez can beat them at their own game. But I swear I only thought there was one devil in there." Kiki sighed. "They always make it sound good, kid. It's one little thing, and then another little thing, and then you wake up one day with a hell portal in your town, and you all cry, 'How'd we get here?'" Kiki had always been stubborn. A devil said, "Be afraid," and she got angry instead. Because that was how they got you, when you didn't have a real need. They filled your head with fears and convinced you something was wrong in your life and convinced you somebody else was to blame. And also, hey, would you look at that? Here they were with the cure. The kid cried, "It wasn't one little thing. It was my dad. What was I supposed to do?" Another devil hit hard, almost throwing Kiki from the door. "Nothing," she said. "Not when it's your dad versus the Pacific Southwest. We're in a different world now, kid. If you want to survive it, you've got to keep to yourself. As soon as they catch on that you love something, they take it away." The kid stared at Kiki like she was a complete stranger. "Is that it?" she whispered. "The great Kiki Hernandez has never lost a fight because she's never even been tempted in the first place?" Kiki drew back, frowning. That isn't what I meant." The kid's voice rose. "Tell somebody who's dying that they shouldn't want a cure. Tell somebody who's starving that they shouldn't want food. Tell somebody—" "Don't yell at me," Kiki warned. "You're not strong," the kid shouted. "You just have nothing to resist." The door went still. The devils stopped screaming. It was just Kiki and the kid staring at each other in a silence louder than the maelstrom had been. And a voice like a death rattle called, "Kiki, oh Kiki, might we have a word?" An urge gripped her then, like nothing she'd felt before. Kiki wanted to bail. From the Legion, from the Toad, from this girl calling her out on a lifestyle that had kept her alive and unsullied this long, thank you very much. But she thought of every town she'd ever played, cheerfully raining chords like holy water and then leaving everyone else to clean up the mess. This army had been a long time coming. Maybe it was Kiki's turn to face the music. "Okay," Kiki said. "Okay, this is what we're going to do." A hot breeze whistled over the road, carrying with it the stale scent of the underworld. Kiki stood on the porch with Mona Lisa against her belly and Ozzy at her side. A devil army waited in the street, lined up in rows by the dozen. They were many-jointed and bulging-eyed and shimmering all the colors of putrescence. They dripped tar and saliva and sulfurous gas, and every one had a pair of flames for eyes burning just for you-know-who. They all broke into motion at once. Kiki launched into an aggressive rendition of Crossroads because, hell yeah, and the devil split left and right, coordinated and loud as a swarm of bees. Ozzy waded in, ripping off 2 heads before Kiki had hardly hit her stride. The kid made a break for her dad. Kiki's blood was pumping, her ears ringing, her entire body electrifying. A shield formed in front of her, sparking with light, and wherever she advanced, she brought devils down in waves. They tried circling her. They tried leaping her. They tried popping out of potholes and leaping out of trees. She got them all. To your left, the kid shouted, as she dragged her father back toward the house. And there it was, in all its split-faced, green globby rot, the toad. It sat on a neighboring rooftop, watching its army explode against her music with perfect serenity. The bastard smiled, long as a knife wound, and what it had to say was so simple, even mindless, bloodlusting devil drones could follow along. Go for the pup. Suddenly, Kiki was fighting empty air. The devil swarmed away, and Kiki ran, her notes wobbling and her heart clutched in panic because they were fast, so fast. They were going for her dog, and she wasn't going to reach him in time. Ozzy! Kiki screamed. They crashed over him in a wave, a mad tangle of limbs and tails writhing like a rat king, and Ozzy howled beneath the assault at a pitch she'd never heard before. Enough, said the toad. Kiki was frozen in place. Mona Lisa was dead in her arms. The street had gone silent, or maybe it was just the ringing in her ears. Ozzy lay limp on the asphalt. The devil started peeling away, awaiting the word to attack. The kid was mouthing something from the porch, or maybe she was shouting, but either way, it was Kiki's absolute lowest priority at the moment, because Ozzy was down. She'd lied to the kid the night before. The truth was, Ozzy had found her, deep in the wreckage of an epic rock battle. She'd banished the theater full of incubi and got herself trapped beneath a fallen beam without a friend in the world to come looking for her. For the first time ever, she'd thought, I can't do this alone. And then a little dough ball of a hellhound had sidled up, its eyes like tea lights, and she thought for sure that this was it. She was a goner. The great Kiki Hernandez was about to have her face eaten off by a pile of fluff with a waggy tail. Except he'd only been interested in the jerky in her pocket. And when he polished that off, and she had nothing left to offer but her own flesh, he'd nibbled and scorched his way through the beam to set her free, careful not to cause a single scratch. He'd been her one and only companion since then, through lean times and flush, from his little tail-chasing days to his much larger tail-chasing days, and Kiki loved his big ugly face more than anything in the world. But she hadn't been willing to explain that to a possibly corrupt, possibly ignorant pawn of a devil, because she'd feared exactly this would come to pass. Sound rushed back to Kiki's world. First it was her own pounding heart, and then it was the kid yelling, "What are you doing? Keep playing!" And then it was the vile squelch thump of the toad leaping from the roof. Kiki's heart was heavy, and it wasn't just the fight. It was the kid's voice in her head, scoffing, "You have nothing to resist." Because that wasn't true. It had never been true. Kiki had just spent a long time hiding. In a voice like honey botulism, the toad said, "Oh, how terrible! How unfortunate! If only there were a way to revive a wounded hellhound. Oh, if only!" Kiki glared, her eyes hot and wet. She didn't have to ask the question out loud. It was always the same. What do you want in return? "I want your guitar," it said. Kiki recoiled. She'd expected something ridiculous. Free rein in Luna Mesa, or one of her limbs, or even her life. But oh, this was far more insidious. She could refuse a deal for the sake of the town, for the sake of her own body, but for a guitar? She stared at Ozzy, struck down in her defense. She thought of him warm by her side every night and quick at her side every morning. She thought of him chasing tar bubbles and waffling for jerky and catching the absolute wrong stuff for dinner, like toxic wrong, but so pleased with himself anyway that sometimes she pretended to eat it. She remembered a roly-poly abandoned pup snuffling through the wreckage for a bit of food and finding her instead. Ozzy's leg twitched. Kiki whispered, "I have terms." The kid cried out, and the toad grinned, and Kiki forged ahead before either one of them could change her mind. "We both walk out of here today," Kiki said, gesturing at the kid. "None of you can touch us." "Give me your guitar," the toad said slowly, "and in exchange, I will revive your mutt, and neither you nor the girl, Lucy Sepulveda, shall be harmed in Luna Mesa today." It was only a delay, a ticking clock instead of instant annihilation. Without a hell-boldened guitar, they'd be defenseless. Kiki and the kid would be dead by morning. The toad took one dragging step toward Ozzy, and Kiki snapped, "Don't touch him." The first flicker of irritation crossed the toad's face. "Your beast is mortally wounded. He needs blood, freely given." "Then give it," Kiki said tightly. She held out her hand and said, "I'll take your horn." The toad's face contorted with such fury that Kiki feared she'd gone too far. It was over. Her dog was about to get eaten, and she'd still have half an army of devils to fight. But she hoisted Mona Lisa once, a simple threat, and the toad's greed overrode its anger. The flesh surrounding its horn was thick with callus, grown up and around the pale thrust of bone like armor. The toad growled as it pulled, yanking harder and harder, until with an ugly crack it came loose. It looked up, panting with pain and hatred both, black blood running thick between its eyes. "We have a deal," it said, and threw the bleeding stump at her feet. It was done. Kiki thought she should have felt something at this, the first deal of her life, but her heart was unchanged. She whispered, "It's been a good ride, Mona Lisa," and kissed the neck of the greatest guitar she'd ever owned. She lifted the strap over her head, 50 inches of supple goat hide, custom branded with her name, and slowly, tearfully laid her guitar on the road. Kiki refused to cry, not when the toad broke into a gleeful dance, not when he cackled with vicious joy, not even when he began to eat Mona Lisa, strap and strings and body and all. Kiki grabbed the horn and ran to Ozzy. She rubbed the stump of the horn over the worst of his wounds and then pried open his jaws for good measure to smear the last of the blood over his gums. "Come on," she muttered. "Come on." Wood cracked and strings snapped, and the toad continued to eat. The rest of the devils gnashed their teeth, jealous and itching to finish the feast the toad had just bartered away from them. Ozzy's eyes snapped open, and he nearly bowled her over in his haste to crowd her lap. Kiki let out a choked sob of a laugh. "Come on, you dingus," she said. "You owe me." She turned in time to see the last inch of the headstock go down the toad's throat. Its belly was swollen with hard lumps, and its tail snapped a contented rhythm against the road. Kiki took a steadying breath and broke into a run, shouting, "Kid, kid, now!" The toad lurched after her, but it was slow and clumsy, dragged down by a belly full of wood. Its minions scattered, uncertain of their parameters. They couldn't harm her, not by the letter of the deal, but they could take the horn, and the toad knew it. He only had to say the word. The kid held out her guitar, that joke of a homemade axe, plain and unfinished, no style, no battle scars, no hellish adaptations, just simple and solid and willing to help. Kiki's hand closed around the neck. She brought the horn down on the strings. That devil was stupid hungry after all. It should have known better. Rock and roll wasn't just about the instrument, it was about the attitude. When Kiki brought that horn down, she brought down a decade of fight. She brought down all the hopes and dreams of every poor sucker in every town she'd ever played before their best intentions went sour, courtesy of a subterranean snake oil salesman. She brought down Ozzie limp in the road, and the kid doing right by her dad, and an old man who just wanted clean water for his town, and she turned that old toad's blood and bone against him. Kiki brought the house down. Afterward, he strode through the dust storm of dissipating devils, tip-tap tripping through Freebird because it was her stage and she could do whatever she wanted. And oh, it was bright, it was fast, it was $1,000,000 and a cold drink on a hot day. And if the tune was a little rough on her commandeered instrument, so what? It was a tune with a message, and the message was, don't fuck with Kiki Hernandez. She stopped 3 feet from the toad. It was half crushed into the road, bottom legs shorn clean off, belly spilling over with rotten food and bits of Mona Lisa, may she rest in peace, and it panted up at her, full of hate. It's not your fault, Kiki said. You didn't realize you were playing against the queen. She hit the last note, and the show was over. Kiki let the last of the music fade away, breathing deep. Ozzie nudged her hand, still moving warily, but moving, by God, her pup was going to be okay. The kid had helped her dazed dad into a sitting position, and all the neighbors' windows had flung open, letting a sea of hopeful faces peer out. The kid jumped up as Kiki approached. Oh, thank you, she said. She bit her lip, hesitating, and then she nodded tightly at the guitar in Kiki's hands. Keep her. I know she's not nearly so good as Mona Lisa was, but she'll keep you safe till you find something better. Kiki hefted the guitar. I don't know, she said. I've got a lot of work to do to bring her up to fighting standard, and it does get lonely on the road. She paused and looked at Ozzie. He was wagging his tail, pleased as punch, like he hadn't just nearly died and been resurrected. But he was an old softy, and he'd have said okay to anybody. Kiki laughed, embarrassed. I guess what I'm saying is, have you ever thought of being a roadie? The kid's hands flew to her cheeks. She screamed. The end.
I really want to do that.
I didn't know if I should like act.
Just so engaging. Daniel and I always talk about how interesting it is how when the writers often don't know each other, hardly ever know what one another are reading, and yet the stories often work together really well. And I feel like that happened again tonight because we had these two writers reading some pretty sinister material in places, but it was so sprightly fun. And I really enjoyed that. So thank you both very much. Everyone, next week we have another great show lined up. We have Nancy Jane Moore and Austin Shirey. You can keep up to date about upcoming authors at storyhour2020.com. And you can see any programs you may have missed, or just maybe watch this one again, which I think I'm going to do, at the Story Hour page on Facebook. So Sonia, Samantha, thank you both so much for being with us tonight, or early morning in Sonia's case, and reading us such wonderful stories. Thank you to my co-host, Daniel Marcus, and all of you. Thank you for joining us at Story Hour and helping us with what Daniel calls spinning the fictive dream together. Good night. Daniel. Hey. You must be really tired.
Oh, man. Oh,
I've been texting you. You want to turn off the thing and let me know how you're doing?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Um,
Well, it was a great night. You're going to really enjoy watching it later.
oh, good. All right, here we go.